Right, I think we're live. Welcome to Discover Dorico. Quick mic check. I have a Russian friend who is a sound technician, and a Czech one too, and a Czech one too. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm sure you'll let me know if you can't. I'll be checking the comments during the session. Today's session is being presented live on Wednesday, the 24th of April at 4 p.m. UK time. Yes, we're in British summertime, BST. Although actually we had a nice bank holiday, it's probably the summer's all over now. If you're watching this live, then about 5 hours ago we released a maintenance update for Dorico, which is version 2.2.20. This session and that maintenance update applies both to Dorico Elements and Dorico Pro, and is a free update for all Dorico 2 users. So today I think we'll mostly look at some of the things in there. After this session, don't do it now obviously, you can download the new version. So where you can get the new version if you go to the Steinberg website. This is the homepage. If you go to support and then you go to downloads here, and then in the software section you can scroll down to Dorico 2, and in here it will then automatically show you, he says while it loads, don't make me load the one I had earlier so everybody else jumps. Alright, never mind. It will show you this, which is the Dorico Pro and Dorico Elements download page here with the new update. And there's also the version history PDF, which of course I recommend, and if you want to know all of the things we talked about today in even more detail, then you can get it from there. And the version history PDF looks a bit like this. So version 2.2.20, there's a few small enhancements and a number of bugs squashed. It's not designed to be, lots of major features today. These are designed to be kind of a few small enhancements that we kind of crept in to a maintenance update, and the maintenance update is normally just to fix a few bugs and that kind of thing. But if you want to read all about the things, then you can read in this file here. It will tell you about some of the improvements. You can also, of course, read our blog. So here's the blog on blog.dorico.com, and this will tell you all about it as well. And there's a scoring notes blog update as well if you want to read about it in there. So let's look at it today in this session. So some of the things that we've added, like I said, it's only a few little things that we've added to this version. So the first one we're going to look at is printing or exporting shortcuts. There's no menu option or buttons for these. The idea was here that sometimes when if you're checking through each part layout, or and you just want to print that part layout or export that part layout, maybe as a PDF, just to see what's going on. You might just want an easy way of doing that with a single shortcut. So if you go to the key commands options here, you can search for things like print or export, and you'll find them in here. So in the print section, for example, here you can export all layouts as PDF, export the current layout as PDF, export the current page as a PDF, and all of these other options in here. So some of these options here, like I said, they just exist, and you can set them as shortcuts. So for example, if you wanted to set some of these with a key command yourself, then you can do so. I did wonder if this is you could use this as an April Fool on somebody else's computer. You can change the shortcuts on their computer, set a MIDI learn button, maybe set middle C as print all or something, and then every time they try and play a piece on their piano, it will print all of the... No, maybe that's a bad idea. So this is, like I said, this is more useful when you're working through something and actually you just want a quick shortcut way of printing or exporting something. So maybe, for example, you finish this piece that you're working on, and normally you'd go to the print menu over here, or the print mode, and you have to choose a layout, and then you'd have to go over here as, maybe you'd normally print it, you want to export it as a graphic to send to somebody, or vice versa. But you can do it from any mode. You can set a shortcut and just hit that shortcut, and you'll get a little dialog will pop up. That was the export that ran in the background there, and then it will automatically exported that. So here is the file that I've exported, which was the current layout. So the shortcut I'd set there was just to export the current layout. As a PDF. So there we go. But like I said, it's not available as a button or a menu item anywhere. It's just available that you can set it as a shortcut, and it's a useful option. Like I said, maybe you're working through a bunch of orchestral parts, and when you get to the end of each one, you want to print it to see what that looks like. I often find that's useful because there are things that only leap out at me when I've actually printed them, rather than looking at them on the screen. No idea why, but it's just one of those things. A couple of little things on that as well. If you have set the graphics, for example, the PDF export location here, then that destination folder will be honoured. If you haven't set it, then by default it will be the project file location. So wherever you put the project file, it will be exported into that same folder if you're exporting a PDF. Another nice little option we've added again, which is in the preferences. Oops, there's me pressing play by accident. Is in here. In the note input and editing option, there's a play all notes in chord when any is selected. So, for example, as you're going through a piece, let's say this one here. If normally what you'll have found is when you use the left and right arrows in Dorico, it just selects those individual notes. And if you want to hear the whole chord, then that wasn't possible. So now what you can do is just with one note selected, if you have this option turned on in the preferences to play all notes in chord when any is selected, and close that. Then, like I said, with a single one selected and using the left and right arrow keys on your keyboard, you now hear the whole chord. You'll notice here I'm only hearing the notes from that single voice, so it is voice specific as to what you're hearing. You're not hearing the whole chord, and you're not hearing both hands of the piano at this point. But it's still nevertheless a very useful option when you're composing and editing things. There's no questions, I don't think, so far on the chat. That's good. Good. I will carry on. A couple of other things that have crept into this version. Things like when you delete things, or maybe you're editing things. So I'll delete this dynamic, for example. Dorico will now maintain the selection, so you don't have to reach for your mouse so often. So if I delete that, you see the note's still selected that the dynamic was attached to. So I could now, for example, come into here and I can put in a new dynamic. Now you could, I suppose with dynamics, you could do that by editing them anyway. But it will also happen for lots of other things. So it could happen with pedal lines or slurs, for example. If you're not just editing them, you want to delete it for some reason, then it's selecting the first note here of the slur. Just undo that one, and there's lots of other items as well. So, for example, pedal markings and those kind of things. So the idea here is that, of course, when you delete something, it's nice to have something still selected, so that then you can use the keyboard still to and shortcuts to re-enter or change anything that you want to, because you're still selecting something on the page. And previously, you'll often have found that Dorico wouldn't have had anything selected, so you had to reach for the mouse every time, when actually you might have just wanted to use shortcuts. So it's another nice little option. Also, if it's system items and things like that, then Dorico will still select something on the page, even if you're deleting a system item. And if you're deleting something that was voice specific, then within a certain range, and it will tell you in the version history because I've just forgotten, it will try and find something. I think within a certain number of beats or within a certain number of bars that's in that same voice, so that you can still carry on working on that one as well. So again, another nice little option. Apart from people saying helpful little feature and howdy John, hi Doug, I don't think there's any questions. Oh yes, is it possible to play back only one of the hands? Actually no, not really, because when you do this and just select one of the hands and press play, it plays you the whole instrument. So if it's an individual instrument, yes, but just one of the hands, not at the moment. Although I wonder if Paul's working on some things like that, but not right now. I don't think there's any other questions on there. No? Okay, good. I'll carry on for a second. There's also an option when you import a tempo track. Do I have something with a tempo track in it? A MIDI file will do. Actually, it might not have any tempos, but when you import your markers, and you can import them as markers if you want, but if you import them as system text, there's a new little option to show a border around system text markers, which can be quite nice, and quite a nice way of showing you the difference between normal system text options and the markers that you've just imported. I won't do that in this file because it wouldn't make any sense to import Game of Thrones into list. There's also some print preview options. So what I mean is when you're in print mode in here, if you have a keyboard that has home and end keys, then when you use the home and end keys now, you'll be able to not only page up and page down, but if I press end, it jumps to the last page of this layout. And if I press home, it jumps to the first page of this layout. So you can use that when you're navigating around in print mode. And actually, that takes us nicely onto some of the bugs that have been fixed or squashed. If you're in galley mode, you might have found previously that when you used the home and end keys before, that it wouldn't necessarily jump to the right increments, but now it will move left and right by a screenful. Previously, you were sometimes getting the width of the first flow, which was what it was using to move on. But now, if I press end, it's now moving just by a screenful rather than what it was doing before. So that makes it much more useful. That's a bug squashed in that one. Of course, in Galley View, you'll notice there's a few things that maybe positioning aren't quite as you'd expect, but they will be in page view, of course. And that's because of the way spacing and things are handled in Galley View, which is intentional. So a few of the bugs that have been squashed that might be worth highlighting for some people. Let's have a look in this one here. I did a couple. You might not have noticed, but some people will have, that grace notes weren't playing back on percussion kits, and they now do. So if I play this one. So now these grace notes will now play back correctly. I think you'll have found in 2.2.10 that they just weren't playing at all, but they now play back correctly. And also a favourite of Stefan on Facebook was he said this new version would have been worth it just with one bug fixed, and the bug that he had a problem with was this one with dynamics and multi-rests. So when I switched to the part in this one, what you used to get here is that because the dynamic here, an immediate dynamic, was effectively in Dorico's attached to this bar, it was splitting this multi-rest and making it a 2 and a 1, or a 1 and a 2. And what you get now is this. So this dynamic is still attached at the same position, but Dorico knows not to split that multi-rest. So I saw that the comment on Facebook earlier where he said if Steam 9195, which is the particular bug report number that one had, he said that fix makes this entire version worth it. So there you go. There's also various other things that you can in this new version which are kind of squashed bugs or little minor adjustments. So for example, sometimes when you pasted a selection that extended a flow, then you'd have problems with Dorico. Will now add an extra bar if necessary. In the playback options, it's now possible to specify the pitch of A4 to 3 decimal places. So if you want to be really picky, you can do. But also things like these spin boxes, these little boxes that you can press up and down in, sometimes they would increment or decrement the value by, I think, the wrong type of units, so they've all been looked at, and they should now be more appropriate for each type of unit. As I said, there's various other changes for things like there's some little tremolo changes and some user interface changes. If you do have a look at the version history file, which I always recommend, so in here this is the version history file, and now it's been updated. It'll tell you all the improvements, the ones we've looked at. So for the key commands options, the note input options for playing all the notes in a chord, maintaining selections and some of the details about that if you want to read about more of the detail, tempo track import, and then the issues resolved. Like I said, there's only a few things which are just minor nice tweaks that we've done, but there's a whole bunch of issues that have been resolved, so that people call bugs. So if you want to look through any of these, like I said, the multi-rest options, there's a MIDI import one that's been fixed here, the grace notes one we looked at, some playback ones, some tremolo ones in here, some little user interface ones, and one on video. So if you want to look at any of those, that is always a very useful document to read. And you can get that, like I said, from our website. You can either download it from the same place here. Here's the updates, and here's the version history PDF. Of course, you can use the Steinberg Download Assistant as well. So this is the little Steinberg Download Assistant program. And you might have used this when you first installed Dorico. But if you come into here now today and click on Dorico and Dorico Pro 2 or Dorico Elements, you'll find for both of these there's the new version, there's a full installer here, and there's also the update. In most cases you will only need to run this updater and it will just update your version of Dorico. But if you ever need it, you can get all of the installers from here. I believe this one, the Dorico Playback 1, has changed, but actually it's only been repackaged. I don't think there's any changes. There's certainly no need, if you're just updating Dorico, to re-download that one. You just need this update to Dorico Pro 2.2.20, but I would also recommend this version history PDF. It's very little, and you can read that maybe while you're downloading the rest, and it will tell you all of the details. As I said before, if you want more details, you can have a look at our blog. You can have a look at the Scoring Notes blog, or of course ask us any questions on Facebook. Also today, I just wanted to look at a couple of other questions that had come up during the month on things that I thought were worth highlighting, because there was some confusion, or I thought people might fall into some of these traps or anything else. So I thought they were worth looking at. So let's have a look at this file again. In this piece, Dorico is very clever about how it deals with voices and on what which voice, so I mean stems up and stems down directions and that kind of thing. Sometimes though it is useful to show the voice colours, so note and rest colours, voice colours, because that will actually show you exactly which voice something's in. Because Dorico is quite clever at how it handles the stem directions, sometimes you can end up in the wrong voice without realising. And so sometimes what you need to do is come along and switch voices. Now actually this one is correct, but I'm going to say what would happen if I selected this bar and I went to voices and said change voice and make all of these a downstem voice instead of an upstem voice. And you can sometimes get this and you think, well, what's going on here? Why is this suddenly expanded into the next bar? If I just undo this and I'll turn on signposts, and I have a shortcut actually that I've set myself for showing and hiding all signposts. And you'll see here, actually these are tuplets, and you'll find that when you do things like swapping voices or copying and pasting things in Dorico, if you've hidden all of the tuplet options, which in this particular list piece I had, then Dorico doesn't copy them. So when you make a selection, it didn't select these signposts unless you were showing them as I am now. So now if I do exactly the same command and go to voices, change voice, downstem voice, now it will copy them into the other voice correctly, because it's also moving these signposts. But in some cases, there's been a couple of questions recently from people who are saying, why is this not happening as I expect? And it's because the tuplet brackets and numbers had all been turned off, or they weren't being selected when you were doing that action. So therefore you were getting an odd result where the tuplets were suddenly becoming longer because the tuplet brackets weren't there anymore. So I just wanted to show that sometimes it is useful to show and hide those things, and like I said, you can set a shortcut for those if you want to. I also had a question actually in the last 24 hours about propagating things, and it was about, if you've finished a score and you've made the score look correct, how do you then go on to making the parts look correct and getting some of those options in? And some of it will be things like individual items, where maybe in this score here, I'm in engrave mode. If I make this this slur flatter, for example, then you might want that to also apply in the part. Just so you can see it's a really obvious change. We're going to make it a really daft slur for a minute. So let's do that, just so we can tell which one we've changed and that we've done a really daft thing with it. Now, if you wanted this to also apply in the parts, you'll notice that in Dorico, if I select something here and just press W to switch to the part, you'll notice that the Dorico isn't going to do that for me. There we go. And you can also use the selection up here. So when I switch to the violin part, you'll notice that this slur doesn't change. So some of those properties, they're separate in the scores and parts. Now, sometimes that's useful, sometimes it's not. So when I switch back to the score here, what you'll find is that this item here, so in this particular case it's a slur, in engrave mode it will have properties set now for the start handle offset and end handle offset, because I've dragged things, and you want to get those things to move into the part as well. So there's an option in the edit menu at the bottom here for propagate properties. If you've got an item selected, it can be one or more items, and you use propagate properties, it will propagate them from this score layout into its part. So just for this violin part, it will now have moved those properties into the violin part. So now I've got exactly the same change. You can also do it the other way around. So if you find something that's daft in the parts and you didn't want that at all, and you then want to also apply that to the score, then while it's selected in the part, you can do the same. You can do propagate properties and put that back in the score, so that now when you switch back to the score, you'll also have the same change. Oops, there we go. So in individual little cases for those kind of property things, it may be that you want to select the whole part. You might find at this point maybe something like select more or select to end of flow or something like that is useful to move a whole bunch of properties that you've changed in either the score or the parts and propagate them to the other one. The other option is, of course, that you might have actually what you've been doing is in the violin part. So let's jump to a violin part here again. What you've actually been doing is you've been working through the part and you've been working out, for example, where the system breaks. You want to put in some manual system breaks or for page turns or for anything like that. You might have put some of these system and frame breaks in, or you might have set specific things about in the layout options for the margins or the space size, so the gap between the staff lines, the vertical spacing, the system formatting, all of those kind of things. If you've set all of that up for the violin 1 part and you think the violin 2 part is basically going to need all of the same things, how do you get those between the two? So if you go into setup mode here and you right click on a part over here, there's a propagate part formatting. So this, as I said, is for things like the layout options and the system formatting options. So if I go to propagate the part formatting option here, then you can choose a part to copy from and a one to copy to. So here it's already selected, so we can copy from violin 1 to violin 2, and I'm going to include the layout options and the system formatting, so I'll press OK. So now when I go to the violin 2 part, because I wasn't looking at it, now what you'll see in here is that you've actually got all of these frame break and system breaks have been set. So it's copied all of the positioning for all of these and any of the layout options and anything else that was set from the violin 1 part, and it's copied it into the violin 2 part to make that all that much neater. So actually, let's just, if I undo that for a second, this is what the part would have looked like before. So it was ending halfway down page 1, and there was some, I think some of these single bar rest were put at the end of the page. This repeat mark, for example, was also put at the end of the page. So just to do that again, you go to propagate part formatting. I'm copying all the formatting from violin 1 to violin 2, press OK. And Dorico will then apply all of those so that you don't have to go through and make all of multiple changes, all of the same changes basically, to multiple parts, which can be very useful. So I just thought it was useful showing some of those because there were questions that came up in the week. I'm just going to check the comments for a second, so let me just see what any of the questions are. The easiest way to select an entire stave. So, for example, if you were in the... Oh, have I missed any questions? Oh, I might have. I'll come back to some of those in a second. So, if you've got something selected here, like the violin 1, and you want to select the whole thing, I often use select more, which is up here. There's a select more option, but you can see here on my Mac it's a Shift Command A, it'd be Control, of course, on a PC. But if you press that, it's selected the whole system here, and if I press it again, then now it's selected it all the way through the entire flow. There's also an option if you want it for to select to end of flow, so select from where you are just to the end of the flow, and you can set a shortcut for that if it's the kind of thing you want. But select more and double tapping select more a couple of times is often the quickest way that I would do things like that. I'm just going to check some of the other comments. I think somebody's answered about an incomplete bar at the start of the score with a short note. I think that's been answered. Yes, you'd use the popover for that. So yes, if you want a very short note, you might want a decimal. So, for example, 4/4, 0.25. Let me just have a look. The can velocities be automated in play mode with nodes and lines? There isn't yet a velocity lane, a velocity editor in play mode. I said yet, so as of today there isn't one. I'm sure we can look at doing something like that in the future, he said diplomatically. Um, the only options you'd have for that at the moment is if you've imported a MIDI file and you don't want any of the velocities, you can in play mode reset. So if you do reset the where am I looking? Yes, reset playback overrides, then that would remove any velocities if you just want your dynamics to apply. But not for editing individual note velocities yet. A percussion legend on the 5-line staff. Maybe Vincent, if you want to drop me a line with an example of that, or send me a file, I can have a look at it. The email address is discoverdorico@steinberg.de. So discover Dorico, all one word, at steinberg.de, and I can have a look at that one. Will Dorico 3 free for will Dorico 3 be free for version 2 users? We don't know when we're going to do a Dorico 3, but normally a major version, so like a Dorico 1 to 2, would normally be a paid update. So probably not, but it's not normally a big fee. Of course, it's also, you don't have to upgrade. You know, if you want to wait till we do a version 4 or Dorico 5, then you can do. But yes, I think it will be a paid update when we do a new version like that. The minor versions, so for example, the 2.1 to 2.2, that was free, and this is 2.2.20 that we've released today, which is of course also free for Dorico 2 users. Is it possible to do different dynamics in the instruments of percussion kit? Yes, but I haven't got one set up. The easiest way to do that, Andres, who's asked, is if you... Do I have any percussion here? No. When you separate out your percussion to show as individual single instruments, then you can apply individual dynamics to those staves if you want to. Maybe if you want to get in touch with me again, discover Dorico at steinberg.de on the email, and I can either show you an example, or if you want to send me a file, I can show you an example in there. Maybe that's one for another session at some point. Any upgrade with Note Performer integration? There isn't any news on that at the moment. I believe some of the work has been done by the Note Perform people and by Arnie. It'd be probably a good idea to check their website or ask them more specific questions. But it probably depends exactly what you mean. I mean, the Note Performer integration is pretty good, but maybe there's a particular thing that you're looking for at the moment. Cool, we've got a few questions today. Can I cover making and printing parts from a full score? Propagation is good. Oh, we did look at some of those. Okay. So Paul, let me know if that's helped at all. But if not, maybe we can look at a bit more in another session. How can I delete something from an instrument part without deleting it from the full score? At the moment, it might depend what the item is, but you might want to hide it. Like I said, because of the properties. So, for example, a dynamic here, you might want to use either a color option, or in some cases some items have a hide option, and those, because their properties, would normally only apply in one part and not the other. But I don't know if that will help answer the question or not. Each of the parts in the flow is starting on a new page even though this isn't in the full score. Can I fix this? So each of the parts, each flow, yes, so in layout options, if you go to flows, then your full score, new flows could always start on a new page, but your parts, you might want to allow an existing page. So what I would do there is use the option at the bottom here, which is select all part layouts, and then you can tick this allow an existing page. So now that actually should apply if your score was created in, I think, 2.2 onwards. That might be on anyway, but if it was an older file, then it probably isn't on. So just tick that option for allow an existing page. So then if you have movement 2, it would start, for example, halfway up a page if necessary in all of the parts. So a question about elements. In elements, you can't easily edit the question is how to display composer, orchestrator, bar numbers and copyright because no engrave part. You can't change the master pages in elements as to where things sit, but a lot of those items would already be in the part, and would already be in the template anyway. for example, the composer. If you put the composer details in, so what you would do is go to File, Project Info, and if you fill in for the project, for example, if you fill in, make sure you've selected the project, because you probably don't want the flow details. For the project, if you fill in a composer, for example, then it would appear in that, it will appear on the first page there. And bar numbers and things like that, they're often in the layout options as to, but maybe that's not what you mean. I don't know. But for example, in here, for in the layout options for bar numbers, you can choose when they appear and how often and that kind of thing, and you can do that in the Elements version as well. Oh, I see some people have answered about file project info, so hopefully that will also help as well. And layout settings between custom layouts. I don't have a custom layout, did I? But yes, I think so, unless what you're asking is actually because you can't do it. As long as the layout appears here, then yes, you can propagate the formatting to that one. But if it's a custom layout, then maybe it doesn't know it's an instrumental layout, so maybe you can't. Andre, if that doesn't answer your question, then get in touch. Is it possible to hide flows in a project while working only on one flow? The easiest way to do that actually is to, for example, make a copy of a full score. I'd normally leave a full score, because if you remove a flow from the full score, then and if you've removed it from lots of things, you can start to you potentially lose your music. It's not necessarily a good thing to do. What I would normally do is I would make, for example, a new full score layout. So, and you can rename this and call it, full score only movement 2 or something if you want to. So that when you make a new flow down here, you can apply that only to that full score. So let me just see. Yes, actually, Paul's just answered. The other possibility is to create a temporary layout that just contains the flow and players you want to work on. Yes. So now in flow, I've got flow 1 here and flow 2. If this score only wants to be flow 2, I can untick flow 1 now. I can leave all of the same players, but you could also untick some of the players if you didn't want all of the players in this one. And when I go to full score only movement 2, then that's all I've got here. I've just got a new layout with just that option, and at any point I can go back to my full score, which also contains all of the flows, because that might be the one you want to print at the end. So hopefully that helps. If not, let me know. So like I said, the email address is discoverdorico@steinberg.de. I'm happy to answer questions on there. If there's other things, maybe that you have a tricky issue you'd like to look at in one of these sessions, or information and a workflow idea that you'd like to share with other people, then please let me know on that email address. It's all one word, discoverdorico@steinberg.de. And the next Discover session I'm planning to be on Wednesday the 22nd of May at the usual time, which is 4 o'clock in the UK. And if I will of course make the YouTube link and the YouTube event so that you can then select that, and you can either be reminded of that individual event, or if you click on the bell and as well when you subscribe to our channel, then you can automatically be notified when we're going to do the next session. I'm just I'll check some of the comments now and see if there's anything else that we've missed while we've been talking. But if not, then thank you for watching. This session will now, of course, be recorded and available on our YouTube channel, and I'll put some time markers underneath of all the things we've looked at if you want to recap any of those, and also a link where you can download the latest version. And please download that. It's at 2.2.20 because it's got various bug fixes and things, useful things in it. So I'll just check the comments again for a second. There's a question about cut, copy and paste individual frames in engraving mode. No, not really, but what you can do if you make a change, so let's say, what page are we on? Page 78, it's probably a bad idea. If I make a change here and then decide I didn't want it to be here, then what you can do in some cases is when you've selected a frame, if I find page 78, it'll tell me that there's an override now. When you right click on here, you can swap things with previous and next page, and you can copy selected frames to selected pages. So that might be what you want. If you want to copy that frame to another page, then use that option maybe. Maybe that helps. Again, if that doesn't help, get in touch. We're normally around on Facebook anyway, but our email address is discoverdorico@steinberg.de. Oh, last thing actually, I was asked today about somebody that added a blank page, and how did they get it? How did they remove it again? You use this remove page overrides. So when I do this on this page over here, it's going to put this back to be in the template. But in this particular case, I think what they've done is added a new blank page like this. So that in fact that was a daft place to do it, but there you go. There's a blank page anyway. And then they want to remove the blank page. And how do you remove the blank page? Well, a blank page would normally be shown here because it doesn't follow a master page. You'll always see it as with overrides. So you do the same, remove page overrides, and that'll remove your blank page and put the music back on it. So hopefully that'll help some people too. So thank you for watching. That's the end of today's session. Please join us again on the 22nd of May. In the meantime, email us on discoverdorico@steinberg.de, and please download Dorico 2.2.20. Thank you. Bye.